Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Beauchamp Fontaine, SDSA, and today I'm pleased to welcome production designer Tamara Deverell and set decorator Shane Vieau. We are going to discuss your creative collaboration on the Netflix series Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. So, Tamara and Shane, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
So I think a lot of times, knowing our audience, what is really beneficial is to hear a little bit about your backgrounds and what led you to get into the world of filmmaking.
I started my film career in Vancouver in BC, and, I was a late lifer. I didn't get into film till I was after the age of 30, and I was very unhappy with the job I was doing at the time. And a friend recommended I go do a commercial one weekend, and I basically worked for the art department just driving a van. But I absolutely loved the whole idea of being on set and being creative. And I spent the next 2 years, basically, I went to school to learn set dec as part of the requirement for the union there. And I came up through the system. I was on the back of a truck for almost 3 years and just sort of slowly started migrating into the office and set dec until someone finally sort of gave me a chance. And, doing a lot of small productions and a lot of freebies, it really sort of seasoned what I did. And I love the path that I sort of took to get where I did. It was a really big labor of love.
Thank you. I think it's great. I think there's not enough people who do spend the time kind of learning the ropes. So I think that's wonderful. It makes stronger throughout, because you also have empathy for what's happening with the rest of the crew and why things maybe don't happen as quickly as one might hope at times or efficiently. So it's
so true. Really true.
What got me into filmmaking? I was in art school. I was sort of a little lost soul who wanted to do everything in art school. And it was actually my father, who's a lawyer and now a writer, suggested I go into filmmaking because it was a world of people who did a lot of everything. And he was right. And so I connected with some people in Montreal, actually, and worked in the costume department to start with. Didn't really know the art department even existed. And then I saw these guys scuttling around, building little things, dressing sets, and became curious. And because I could draw as an artist, people saw my excitement and energy in making films in whatever capacity. I was just so inflamed with it. And somebody said you should be in the art department because you can draw, and I reached out to various production designers, Francois Seguin being the first one, who's a Montreal designer, and got in with him and learned how to draft and how to design things and how to do graphics, and that was kind of it.
That's very neat. So now obviously you've both worked with Guillermo before, so it's clearly a collaborative and I would imagine quite comfortable relationship by now. What do you think some of the touchstones are that differentiate him as a filmmaker? I have worked with him as well, so certainly I know how thorough he is in his own preparations with visuals and research and whatnot. But given the fact that a quote of his own is the first image sets the tone and the theme, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I'm sort of the grunt of the business in set dec. We're the ones that do the physical labor and going out and getting the stuff. But what's amazing about Guillermo knows exactly what he wants and what he doesn't like. And as soon as you have a language of what the man appreciates and he gets into, you can really just go from there and build on that. And the thing that distinguishes him from most directors is that he has a vision, clear up, you know exactly what you're getting into when you work with him, and you have a starting place. It's not like you're trying to rally around where you need to go with the director. That man, as soon as you understand where he's coming from, it just makes it so much easier for me to do the job that I do.
The wonderful thing about Guillermo is he does draw, and he is an artist in his own right. And so I just instantly have an artist's language with him, where I will sit down and draw together. And, we still use words, but we actually can just sit down with a stack of drawings. He can read them, not saying that all directors can't read drawings, but some are just more able to, and understand space and composition. And also his knowledge of like art history, film history, the history of the world is so extensive that he just brings everything in. It's like Picasso becomes a reference, or, Hammershøi, a Danish painter, became a reference for us on Nightmare Alley, and same thing on Cabinet of Curiosities. So he's referring to things that I can relate to as somebody who studied art for so long, including art history. So there's a communication that's really like artist to artist with him that I don't get with a lot of other directors.
No, that's unique and that's wonderful. I said this to you earlier, Shane, but to me, the series, what is very interesting about it is how, quote, very Guillermo it feels. You feel his influence through all of the episodes. And I can imagine that the challenges for you working with directors, most of whom, if not all of whom, and please correct me, seem like they came from the feature background. So you have feature directors who are not accustomed to the episodic television where a showrunner really is the person, what they say goes. Someone as strong, especially with his visuals, as Guillermo. Of course, both of you, again, having worked with him, knew what his look was. And what were those challenges with these other directors who are, creators in their own right, and I'm sure had ideas on their stories. And so how did you both service Guillermo's vision and, meld that with each director's vision? And Tamara, do you want to start?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would just send everything to him first, get his first reaction, and then share with the directors, to be honest, not to be stealth or anything, but, he's the one he's the one I'm working for and whose vision I understand. And he hand curated these stories or these directors. So, that was my first go-to. And then he was very open and free with with each director, enabling them really to realize their own vision. So it was like, it was sort of like doing 8 different little mini feature films, each with an independent director, but under the guise of Guillermo's sort of overall vision. It was a bit of a tightrope walk, I think, for all of us in that sense. It wasn't easy. Like, I had some directors early on who came into sets that I had to start designing and building before they were hired, who came in and went, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I would have done, but I get it. It's a Guillermo set, so I'll work within it. And I used to like, yeah, it's my set too. It's a bit like that. But I could always blame Guillermo, not in any malicious way, but he had my back. Guillermo was like there for me, saying, well, you're the designer. You understand what I want, you and Shane, so go for it.
Right. And Shane, how about you? Because that's oftentimes some of the directors will even do a bit of an end run around the designer once you're on set to start talking about their needs and wants and that kind of thing. But did you feel that you were pretty protected? I think, Guillermo's umbrella of vision, of course, he is so respected that hopefully that also gave you guys, as Tamara said, some real protection if people were trying to go a little bit off path.
You were right with the fact that most of these directors came from horror films, and they came from lower budget horror films. So I think there was an essence of understanding and appreciation that coming into this show, each of the directors was able to deal with a talented team. And so from that, we were able to sort of keep the essence of Guillermo and be able to adapt a little bit to the director's needs and wants and sort of work with them to sort of appreciate that. So, these guys were great to sort of give us the essence and try and get in there sort of the way they do things. And it was really interesting to watch. And there were a few episodes that you really had to step outside your comfort level to sort of accommodate a vision. But it was a great thing to do. All these directors were fantastic, and they were really appreciative of coming into a crew that had all worked with Guillermo.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you had different DPs on every single episode as well?
Yeah, there were a few DPs that did a couple of repeats, but the essence of each one was they were different DPs. Some of them brought in their own from out of the country. We had a couple that were local that did a couple of doubles, but each one of these guys had a really different way of approaching things and doing things. And some of them, because they came from independent world, didn't quite know how to ask for sort of certain things to sort of get what they want, but they were just really good at the end of the day. And they all had a very different look with what they did. So it was really nice to see.
Great. And what I was remiss in doing is I want to compliment you both. I mean, it's an exquisitely crafted series. I mean, it's great looking. And I do feel, being in the industry as well, we can always tell when it's the tells that let you know when it was built on set, and the challenges of building on set, which I want to touch on as well. Of course, that is always preferred for the shooting crew. And a lot of times if you're on, I read somewhere that you were on 4 sound stages and they were chock full of sets. That's a lot of work. That is a mountain of work. But, I think that one of the other things that I really was able to see was the beauty of the lighting. And so much of it was practical lighting. So Shane, kudos for that. And of course, Tamara, in the viewing, that was mostly a set build and was really, that was a tough one for me to watch, but it was fantastic looking. I mean, that was, yeah. So I should have started with my compliments to the jobs well done, because it's exquisite. So one thing that I did want to touch on, that's the part that is stepping away from what is perceived, as we all know, is having both of you having very glamorous jobs, because you're doing something creative. But with 4 sound stages and the 2 sets of, 2 teams of directors and their teams working each time with you, what were the, challenges of the logistics and whatnot in pulling that together?
Yeah, it was a bit of a chess game, kind of masterminding it, like which pieces are going to fit where, and which sets we could actually reuse, because we did over the course of the 8 shows, we reused some of the sets. Could we do that? What we had to build, were we going to build a forest, which we did build in the end for Dreams of Wish House, or were we going to go to a forest? Because we did start by looking at actual forests, but then it wasn't magical enough for Catherine Hardwicke, for one thing, or for me. And it was like the idea of shooting in a forest in Ontario in November was kind of inconceivable with 2 child actors. So, or 1 child actor, I should say. It was really like, we kind of danced around. And I think, we have a really strong supervising art director, Brant Gordon, who really masterminded, came on a little bit later because he was busy on another project, but he really masterminded where we were going to place things in all these studios and how we were going to do it. And, and we had the good fortune of just enough time that we didn't feel restricted that much. I mean, we were, it was a daily scramble, but it was, we had stuff well in advance enough to really figure things out. Some major things changed early on. There were other shows we were going to do. We had other directors that they were talking to. Those things fell away. Other things came up. Panos came up. He didn't really like the stories that Guillermo was presenting. So Guillermo said, for the viewing, write your own story. So Panos Cosmatos just said, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And then do your homework, show the art department what you want. So he was literally writing the story, and we were doing a series of meetings, kind of coming up with what I was trying to extract from him, what he wanted in terms of a set, this brutalist set. He wanted a circle, like he had very broad strokes. And so, we sort of workshopped it, which was a very unique way of doing things with a director while he's writing something. We were all over the place.
How much time did you guys have?
Well, I think we got 16 weeks of prep before we went in. But in essence, when we started shooting, you were literally prepping one episode. There was no breaks between each episode. You literally went from one to the other. But what I also need to give big kudos to is that Netflix really gave us the resources to do what we really needed to do that show. And we were shooting during COVID. And I must stress that Set Deck didn't have an office. So we worked mostly out of our vehicles and out of our lockup.
Oh my
in
God.
essence, because, you wanted to stay in open spaces. You wanted to sort of have that comfort level. And so because of the spacing in the offices, SetDeck only had my office there. All the buyers were mostly sort of remote and on the road. And I also need to give big kudos to the women that work for me as my buyers, because 3 of them are over the age of 65. I had the top dogs of women that have been doing this for over 30 years, each of them. And they all brought such an A game to the table. And I would not have been able to do the show without the support of them.
That's wonderful. And why don't you give us their names? Because that is an important shout out.
Patricia Larman, Marlene Rain, and Carol Greaves, and a woman named Rebecca. What's Rebecca's last name?
Elliot.
She's going to kill me. Rebecca Elliott. She's going to kill me. But I will say that these women were so organized and all about form and function, which I find in this business is not recognized enough, because we don't train people like we used to. But these women have the skills, and they just brought this organization to the table that is needed to do a show of this scope, which made it much easier for me to participate and be able to put it on screen.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that you both mentioned your teams, because without a strong supervising art director and your team of buyers, we are just in a lot of trouble, a world of hurt. So
we are nothing without our crews, quite honestly. And the best thing you can do when you set up a show is hire the best people and make sure you surround yourself with people that bring something to the table. And as we all know, working in this business nowadays, because we're so diluted with so many shows, it is harder and harder to put an A team together, because everyone moves up very fast and everyone's always on something else. So again, we had an A team from construction to paint to my whole crew. It was really fantastic.
that is fantastic. So here's a fun question, which is, how did the production design and set decoration reflect the characters and the themes of the piece? And I feel that a couple that I would love for you guys to talk about were Lot 36, The Outside, Graveyard Rats, and The Murmuring. And of course, I know The Murmuring, they ended up in a home that wasn't their own, but it was still, the wallpapers were fantastic. The set decor was spot on. I mean, I loved how you felt. That was the one that happened to have resonated the most with me.
Well, this is a good one, because this was actually the first show that we did. And we had, Shane and I are both laughing a bit. We had so many conversations with Jennifer Kent, the director, who was in Australia, who's Australian, about wallpaper. And we all were like, we were digging into the Williams and Morris catalogs. And we literally drove each other crazy looking at wallpapers and colors. And Jennifer she wanted to do blues. And she did this movie Babadook. You can sort of see these in the renders a bit, that was intensely blue. And she was very afraid to use the blue. And I encouraged her, because it felt right for me, for the movie, for the characters.
I agree.
It's an emotional movie. It's not so much a horror movie. I mean, it's a ghost story, but it's a story of love and motherhood and coming together and falling apart and coming together as a couple. So, blue just seemed the right mood for everything. Yeah, so we did that. And this is interesting. This is Jennifer's paint mood references that she gave Shane and I that were really helpful. Like, it really gave us a direction. And you can see the amount of blue in there with the hits of warm reds and so on. So we really played with that.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
And these are now your references?
No, those are Jennifer's still, but they became ours. This was because it was set in the 50s. So this was very much the 50s flavors and also for the cinematographer, for us to go for the lighting and for the look and for costumes. This is the actual set. So you can see the Williams and Morris wallpaper. And of course we had the bird theme in the wallpaper, and Shane, who's a genius, took all this old furniture and he lifts it up, literally physically builds longer legs to bring the characters into the camera. Shane, kudos for you for that, because it's really, it makes such a difference, because so much of this furniture, that beautiful furniture, is just also low. So if you look closely, you can see the little addition of tiny little 3 inches or whatever it was. But,
Yeah.
You know, if we take the sofa, for instance, Jennifer was obsessed with that rose color. So we were able to sort of bring that in for her. But what was amazing about that sofa is that when we had it reupholstered is that Jennifer wanted the chunk of those cushions, those old cushions with the down. So we ended up, I think, taking about 60% of the stuffing out of that thing to give it that chunk that Jennifer really, really loved. And
Like
what I loved about Jennifer, she had those great small details that, you know, really brought a lot to the game.
That's helpful. I mean, and her reference, I have to say, was really well done. That is another, you know, boy, to get that at the outset is beyond helpful.
Yeah, she was super, super passionate about everything that we sort of contributed to the thing. And we sort of engaged her during every step of the process. And she was lovely. She really helped us out. It was a fantastic episode to do because that house was so rich. And it takes place in Nova Scotia, where I'm from and where I live. And that's where Tamara now lives. So it was a great thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, and we built this crazy, you know, maritime styled house. So we found this great location. So the path you see, this is our render, but that path, that's sort of before the house, was there. And there used to be a mansion there. So we really had something to play with to ground it, which made a huge difference. And then, VFX took care of the top of that exterior. But it also had like a boathouse at this exterior, and it had a lakefront, which we played as oceanfront for all the birds. And there's the boathouse. We had to do a bit of work on it. It was kind of falling apart. But it was, it was kind of
exquisite. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was
a gift. It was a location with a gift. It was far away. It was daunting. It was full of bugs and bones of old cats and people. And it was kind of strange. Yes, we were warned about human bones and not to touch any human remains were we to find them while we were doing our installation, and that we couldn't dig in certain areas. So kind of good creepy for a ghost story. Oh yeah, lot 36. Yeah, well, we custom made that. This is the render. We custom made that linoleum floor based on, I mean, I think those of us who are old enough remember this floor from the 70s. I certainly do. And this was actually the set, I'll be honest, is a set that we used in Nightmare Alley and that we had stored in a trailer, which was a burning shack set for those who've seen Nightmare Alley. And it was just great bones. It had layers and layers of plaster, and we just added layers and layers more. And we actually used it for 2 sets during the course of Cabinet of Curiosities. So we made it into this 70s old man apartment, and then we made it into the Graveyard Rats tenement apartment.
You should be really tagging this for sustainability. I love the fact that this has now been in use for 3 projects. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, the thing is, at the very end, the construction coordinator, Mark Kutenbrauer, amazing construction coordinator, said, Tamara, we can't use this again. It's going in the garbage bin. It's got way too much plaster on the walls. But we all felt pretty good about that, like that we were reusing stuff that was, and it's like, it's a nice sort of homage in a way.
Yeah. And Shane, I'll give you a commendation. The practical lights, your shades, your window treatments, gorgeous, really gorgeous.
What I really loved about this show is that everything we did was hyperreal. And, we can all do sort of straight sets, but it's always such a privilege as a decorator to be able to go in and do something hyperreal, because that's where you really get to paint in really great elements that make things pop, and which wouldn't really suit sort of other environments. So this was really a pleasure to do.
Really, really nice.
Oh, this was Eddie's office. There was a big scene here that got cut, but we had fun doing this old, 1970s videotapes.
Yep.
And we had a
and how do you make a storage locker place look interesting is always a challenge.
Yes.
And then we actually shot at a real storage locker place. We had built the entire interiors because shooting in a storage locker just is not possible to do what we wanted to do with wild walls and stuff. But we found this great old storage locker place in Hamilton, Ontario that I think they were shocked at how much we aged it and all the signage we had. It was a lot of aging. It was much more pristine.
Yeah.
You know, the typical location, people are really pleased that you've chosen their place, and then you make a mess of it.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, your scenics did a fantastic job throughout the series as well.
Yeah, we have Sue Ellis.
Sue Ellis is absolutely incredible. And her aging on what she was able to do in that locker just made every wall a joy to look at going through it.
I should have sent some photos of the many scenics working, you know, plastering the different layers of paint on to get that. You know, what was interesting too on this is we had to make, in the hallways, we made our own lights, and in here, and we left where you see that mesh, we left it open and just piled dust bunnies. Well, here you can really see it on the mesh, and it was just open to the rest of the studio in such a way that it would feel like it's storage locker above storage locker, which, you know, some of those places are. And I was sort of inspired by reality. Yeah. And then Shane, you know, we spent hours testing and customizing these shades, the fluorescent shades, which are actually LED tubes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the DP was able to light through the mesh, and it really gave a great creepy effect.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
What was great about that episode was Guillermo Navarro, who directed the episode, is also an Oscar-winning cinematographer. Yes. So he brought so much love to that. It was fantastic.
This one really made me, I went back and watched Pan's Labyrinth after watching this one, because I was just thinking about the influence of, you know, Guillermo definitely loves that containment and compression that comes from certain environments. And I can't even imagine how, I read, Tamara, that you had to put like a channel within the tunnel itself for them to be able to film it. And
yeah. Wow. Yeah, we had to devise a whole camera rigging system, which, you know, Brant, again, did an amazing job coordinating between all the different departments, because they had these crazy tunnels that collapse and this and that. This one was easy. One of the buildings was a reuse from Dreams in the Witch House, the background building on the across from the main building. But the main building was there, and we dressed it with some graphics and some vines, a lot of vines. So this is our little render. Everything is in black and white in this, by the way, because we were going to do the film in black and white. At the last minute, they showed it as color. They aired it as color, but you can see a black and white version, which was, our intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are some of our renders of the rat tunnels. And that was, you know, we had an actor who was actually asthmatic. We couldn't use real dirt in there. We had to use cork that we finally ground for the dirt. I mean, not just because he was asthmatic, but also just being in there for hours and hours. The poor guy. Yeah. And this was this crazy bone room this is sort of a work in progress picture, or is it an illustration? I can't tell. Shane got so many skeletons. I think we need these again, Shane, on the next one. You got to track those skulls down. This is a still. So we built this whole sort of fish market into the cotton factory in Hamilton. Yeah, we had this. The director on this one, Vincenzo Natali, actually comes from a storyboard. He was a storyboard artist. So he storyboards every frame of this movie. And you can actually access, I think, somehow through Netflix, his storyboards for this, which are like a graphic novel, really. And so he really nails it. You know, I was just thinking about the fish market. We had to do these giant hooks because he had them in the storyboards. This is the same set. So you can sort of tell that we used it in lot 36. Took up the carpeting, exposed the wood floor, you know, and I don't remember how much we had planned this in advance. And then we had this whole thing with the ceiling caving in. This is sort of our render. This one was fun. I love this set because he's in the bed and the prostitute next door is shaking the walls, and the Jesus cross is knocking. And, you know, we had lots of really great details in this.
Absolutely.
Again, those lights, Shane, that you built were.
Yeah. You know, this was my favorite set. And it's always nice when you get to do sort of those cold bear medical institutions. At the time, it was really a joy to do. And this was at Casa Loma, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's where you shot in Crimson Peak, but in that other area. But where we built this. So this is sort of a set built within a location, but like everything you see there is pretty much built. And we just had to connect it to have this wander through. So yeah, so that background behind the guy with the casket is a build in a bigger
foreground herringbone pattern that's so strong.
Well, yeah. That's the floor there. It's actually an old stables at a big mansion in Toronto. It's like now a tourist, like every city has one of these. Now a tourist attraction.
That was serendipitous because that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it was. I think it was one of the main attractions for that.
The autopsy. So this was our second one after the murmuring. This is the one where I was talking about the director, David Pryor, wonderful man who came in and had the set was already built and he hadn't been hired. And so he was the one who said, oh, this is a Guillermo set. Up the street from the studio, a little Art Deco building that we found. This is the set. And this was actually one of my favorite sets of all the series. I just loved this set.
To look at the floor, each one of those individual tiles, all assembled and put together, made by the paint and mold department. They did such an amazing job for faux tile. Yeah. And it was that set, we were there a lot. So all the details really needed to work to be able to shoot it. And it was fantastic. It's like the floor really was the winner of that set. They did such a great job.
The floor, the big warehouse window at the end, and there's skylights that we put there. We put real leaves on them and real gunk. And at first David was like, well, I'm never going to see this beautiful ceiling. And Taz Mikos, who's the DP who I worked with years and years ago, he was like, I'm getting your ceilings in every day. He'd come to me, I'm getting a ceiling in, don't you worry. And a lot of this filming was these guys flat on their back. So there was a lot of opportunities. So it was.
These renders are gorgeous. Are these yours?
Some, there's multiple hands and a lot of.
They're gorgeous.
Thank you.
It's funny. The sheer, there was a shot that they really wanted to do in front of the TV, in front of those shears with the color. And it was a model off Philip de Lorca, who I'm obsessed with. I love that photographer. And I was always great to see those images he would do from LA, the really great light through the windows. And they were really able to replicate that in the episode.
Oh, this is the outside. Originally, it was called Some Other Animals Meet, which is actually based on a graphic novel, a very short graphic novel from which we derived this entire, small movie. And we just went, you go, Shane.
So if you look at the sofa, the sofa was the linchpin of the whole set for me, because it was that one iconic piece from the 70s from the Midwest that everyone always had, that sofa. So I had a picker in Pittsburgh who worked for almost 2.5 weeks to find me 3 versions of this sofa. And I absolutely love them. They're like museum pieces because they just really blend so well.
And, in this one, Anna Lily, the director, Anna Lily Amapour, wanted to, create this sort of timeless 70s, 80s. We were very non-specific, but with what year. It's just these people were living in kind of the past, but it really wasn't specifically. We could do whatever we wanted. We didn't have to be specific. This is 1977. Everything has to be 77 or 1984. So we just played around with a lot of things. When we were doing the SketchUp model, John Chan, one of our set designers, was doing it, and he used one of the standard SketchUp model wallpapers that sort of look 70s-ish. And I said, we got so used to it. I said, look, well, let's just print that. That's green wallpaper. But all those tiles, we did custom the flooring tiles and the tiles in the kitchen, we did custom digital. There you can see our references.
Mhm.
And then Shane found these great cupboards. Remember those cupboards, Shane? Those great,
Yeah.
we painted them, and
They're metal. They're those gunmetal ones that were
Yeah.
very big in apartment buildings.
Yeah.
this is the render, but we actually, like, Shane found 2 sinks and we painted them that green. I can't remember if we painted the toilet and the tub. I think so, right, Shane? Or
We
you
did.
find the green toilet? I think we painted all the fixtures.
And you know, in that house alone, there's 175 pieces of taxidermy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was full on.
I think Anna Lily kind of died and went to heaven when she saw the tables of taxidermy that Shane had brought. Because she said, well, I need some choices. Well, she, like, and there's so much footage she shot, just shots of, like, the bear, shots of, the close-ups on the taxidermy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being that the main character is a taxidermist.
Yes.
There we go. You guys have lots of shots of them.
Thank you. Thank you
was
for that. Yeah.
I remember this was the basement set, walking in there late at night, like, and often Shane will stay late at night. And I got so creeped out because all these little dead eyes are on you. This is just my basement in Toronto. Basically, I've copied my unfinished basement.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Very inspired by. Don't ever finish your basement if you want good basement inspiration. Oh, this is set deck gone wild with the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
This is the rich woman's crazy environment house.
Yes, where she was introduced to the fantastic facial cream.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we found these sofas. Actually, we were out scouting, and those sofas were on the street in the neighborhood of the other house, the 70s house. And Anna Lily was like, well, these are perfect. Shane wasn't with us. She said, call Shane, see if we can send a truck and we'll reupholster. And Shane was like, well, but we did it. And they turned out really well.
Really
Again, reduce, reuse, recycle, and then Shane just got all the other stuff to go with him. And we made all that kind of ugly art, the big piece with the dog in it. And oh my God.
There's an amazing store in Troy, Michigan called Le Shop. And she does all the auctions all through Michigan. And every time we do something either 70s or 80s, she is the maverick. I mean, she has the creme de la creme of all the iconic pieces. She is definitely an amazing place to go.
Wow. And what is her? She's in Troy, Michigan. What's her name, did you say?
It's called Le Shop.
Le Shop.
The shop. And what happens is there's so many wealthy people that live on the outskirts of Detroit that whenever people get rid of estates and stuff like that, she's always the first one that they call. And so she works with a lot of interior designers in LA and in Florida. And they always come to her because she gets the creme de la creme of the 80s and 90s stuff. And it's just fantastic to see. They're really, really beautiful, stellar pieces.
Great. And here's this frame, I think, is wonderful to illustrate the collaboration that takes place between art department, set decorating, and costume.
I was just going to say, shout out to Lou Cicada, who's our costume designer, with these outfits the women were wearing, just so over the top.
Yeah.
It was, he really nailed it. He really nailed it. I mean, you could just tell even from the backside of those women what their characters are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we found this empty closed bank. It was kind of amazing. And we had to go and build all the teller things, and which was probably just as well so they could wild and stuff. So you can sort of see there was some stuff in there, but we kind of built all the stuff that you see modeled here. Yeah, this was good. It was just the right. Yeah, Pickman's model. A nightmare of paintings.
Yeah.
That has been a challenge. My goodness. Because they have to be cleared, which we all know what a...
Oh, we created it all.
You created all of
Actually,
it. That's great.
All of it.
some of the galleries we got some found art that was we were able to clear, but all of these sketches
Mhm.
and all of the hero paintings were created by, we had Vincent Prost doing some, we had Lisa Cohen doing some, we had our talented scenics doing paintovers, a bunch of people in the art department. We had Guy Davis, who's Guillermo's regular concept guy, wonderful guy, did some. I mean, we were all over the place doing, so much. Just anybody in the art department. Guillermo's daughter was working with us for a bit. Danny, she was doing some. Talia Stefanovic, who was sort of our, assistant art director and ahead of making all the of organizing all the paintings, was doing stuff. I was drawing on the walls, in the sets, where Pickman's got all these crazy drawings. It was fun. And we did the cellar set, which good scenes. Now this is our redo of the Murmuring set for Pickman's. We completely rebuilt the staircase, the back window, total redress, obviously, and all those paintings that we were making.
Yeah, there were 75 paintings that all had to be reframed for period framing and stuff like that. And the Gold Guild, it was a very, very big challenge, but it worked out really, really well. This was one of our favorite sets because we got to recreate the whole art studio, and those art studios were so stunning back in the day. Yes. And what we're able to sort of bring in, and the volume of all those easels. I think there were something like 42 easels, all period, in that thing. And we had to break.
Jane, did you find them?
So we found about 30 of them. And then there was an art house store that had replications of the old period ones that we brought in for some standards. But this was such a beautiful location to shoot. And the dressers did such a great job on this set. Really, really, really well done.
This is the same room we saw with the couch and the sofa gets transformed in his sort of dream vision. And this is a space that we had to make the painting for. So we had to actually make the painting before and after we shot the painting, kind of had a composited painting in. But yeah, it's we made that wallpaper, right, Shane?
We did.
In the end. But there was a wallpaper. Yeah. I can't remember. We fell in love with the wallpaper at Spadina House. So at the house that we used for the exterior, Shane and I, we love this wallpaper, and we weren't shooting inside. So we just went ahead and made the wallpaper because it was sort of creepy. And yeah.
The food stylist did such a great job on building that table. It was fantastic. Really, really, really well done. And it shot really well. It shot slightly darker than this, I think. Didn't it? Yeah. But it was great. It was almost like the cook thief, his wife and her lover. All the decaying food.
Yeah. Oh, this is back in the mansion, going down to the creepy cellar with more paintings, more sketches. I mean, we just had layers and layers of them. We were tearing them up. We were aging them. We were having the painters age them. Great special effects guys who did all our cobwebs and dirty, dusty. They really did a great job. And I think props, we had somebody just doing candles for days. Dreams of the Witch House. Love this one. This is Catherine Hardwick, which is, she comes from a background as a production designer. So I was really on edge. I was like, oh, how are we going to do it? Shane had worked with her before. She's lovely. And, she brings a lot to the art department because she's done it for so many years before she became a director. This was, the seance theater thing was definite nod to Nightmare Alley. That's our render of the witch house, which we built a portion of, and the VFX did the rest. Another great. The graveyard, church graveyard. Shane found these fantastic, I don't know if we're going to go inside here, but these fantastic paintings, canvases from an actual church that we used. Those are amazing. Where did you get those, Shane? Those big?
We bought them at an open air market, but they were Russian Orthodox paintings, and they were 150 years old, and they were 15 feet tall, all rolled up. The guy didn't want to show them. Do you notice that floor is the same floor that we used in the apartment in in Graveyard Rats.
Yeah. Again, this was a location, Shane did his magic, but we loved the floor, and Catherine, who's got a great eye, was like, I got to get a shot of this floor. So this little girl's being pulled out into the void, but along that beautiful floor. This is the church. So this is what I was talking about with those big murals that we framed and put on those walls.
So they're original, those murals.
Yeah.
The mural over on the left-hand side, and it was stunning.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
This was just a white church, literally. You can see the parts of the ceiling we didn't paint. It was all like that. We painted it blue. We painted the floor. We built it a giant altar in the front. We added those, big paintings, big Jesus, those crazy light fixtures.
Yeah, those light fixtures.
Gables.
The church was amazing though, because they really let us do what we wanted to do, and they didn't feel conflicted by the content at all.
So this is back to this crazy forest that we built. And, we were looking at so many different images of trees and different twisted trees, real trees, fantasy trees. And then Catherine and I came across these truncated trees that were like tuning forks in some real forest somewhere. And that was sort of our inspiration. And then our incredible scenics took molds off of the trees outside of the location in the story, which is the childhood home, that had these, I can't remember the name of the tree. I think it's like a linden tree or something. Has this incredible bark. So we actually made molds of the bark to put on these trees, which really gave them a great look. And then our greens department, Chris Peters and their gang did an amazing job.
This was my favorite episode.
Oh God, it was just so many images that we were looking at. He wanted, so Panos wanted this idea of a round room with a sunken living room, very 70s. And then I don't remember, and all very brutalist. And I don't remember, there was one image in our research where there was this giant chandelier. And I had done this thing on Star Trek, which I'd done Star Trek Discovery with these giant pipes. I made this whole, Michelle Yeoh was the captain of this altered universe ship. And I made this whole set with these pipes. So I was sort of inspired by that a little bit, and this image of this giant chandelier to create this huge ceiling piece. And then Shane, you can talk about the sofa. Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they wanted to model the sofa after sort of a period one. So, I have the one thing I'm really blessed with is I have a really great full-time upholsterer and painter that works with me, and just sort of getting the tufting and everything right on that piece for the build. I think there was like 32 pieces to put that thing all together, and it just worked out so beautifully. What's great about these shots and the way they shot this was the DP shot through crystals. He had asked us to go out and buy chandelier crystals, and he lensed them and did reflections and stuff off it. And it was such a fantastic effect.
And then a question for both of you would be, what would be some advice for those who dream to follow in your footsteps? And why don't we start with Shane, because this is for the SDSA, if you don't mind, Tamara, because
no, go for it.
So I will say that this is a second career for me, and I absolutely love what I do. I love the fact that I'm on the ground every day. I love the fact that I change up a job every 6 to 9 months. And I love the fact that I get to work with an amazing, talented group of variant people that, it's always a joy to meet someone new. Your life is never the same. You're never in the same sort of week to week with what we do. And I think that just keeps everyone on their toes, and it just makes never getting tired of what you do. And I really, really, really love that.
And what would you say for people who want to do it? Like some sort of tips about collaborating with others? And I mean, you shared at the beginning that you started on the truck. And what are some things?
I will say that I have no background in design. I have no background in interior design. I think that if you want to do something like this, you simply have to have the passion for what we do. I would suggest volunteering on everything that you can get into. I would suggest looking into your unions and where you want to go. But I am the perfect example of someone that's been able to do rather well in my career, and for sheer will of working hard. It's a great job.
Yeah, and scrappiness. I mean, you've got to really get in and dig.
Absolutely. That's a good word. Scrappiness is how we thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't thank you both enough. This was really informative and fun, and both of your talents absolutely shine through in these every set. I mean, there wasn't a false note. I was just blown away the entire time. It was excellent. You're both stars in your fields.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate the SDSA reaching out and doing this for us, because we don't get that opportunity to talk about what we do. So this is really a privilege and a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you both for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.